Hey everyone, I'm Mono Scaling. I'm here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now get comfortable and relax. My name is Julia Brown. I need to write this down while I still remember who I am, or who I was. I'm not sure anymore. What happened at Mammoth Cave last month isn't something I can explain to anyone. When I try to tell people, they look at me like I've lost my mind. Maybe I have, but I know what I saw. I know what I lost. It started as a simple vacation. My sister Amy had been planning this trip for months, a week in Kentucky, camping in our rented RV near Mammoth Cave. She'd just gone through a bad breakup and needed to get away from Portland. I'd used up my vacation days and figured why not. I'm a tax accountant. My life is spreadsheets and quarterly reports, and the idea of sleeping in an RV and hiking through caves sounded uncomfortable and vaguely claustrophobic. But Amy was insistent. "Come on, Jules," she'd said over the phone. "When's the last time we did something together? Just the two of us?" She was right. It had been years. We'd grown apart the way sisters do. Different cities, different lives. She worked in graphic design, had a creative mind, dated musicians and artists. I wore sensible shoes and owned 3 nearly identical blazers. But she was my sister, and she needed me. We met at the RV rental place in Louisville on a Thursday morning in late September. The weather was perfect, cool enough to need a jacket in the mornings, warm in the afternoons. The leaves were just starting to turn. Amy looked thinner than I remembered, her hair cut short in a way that made her look younger and more vulnerable. "You made it," she said, hugging me hard. Of course I made it. The RV was bigger than I expected, a 28-footer with a small kitchen, bathroom, and sleeping areas. Amy had already stocked the fridge with wine and snacks. We spent an hour getting used to the controls before heading south toward Mammoth Cave National Park. The drive took about 2 hours. We caught up on the usual things: her ex-boyfriend Marcus, who'd cheated on her, my boring job, Mom's hip surgery, Dad's new boat. Normal sister talk. It felt good, actually. Easy. The RV park we'd reserved was about 3 miles from the main cave entrance, tucked into the woods off a narrow road. It wasn't one of those massive commercial campgrounds with swimming pools and miniature golf. Just 20 or so sites scattered among the trees, each with electrical hookups and a picnic table. The woman at the check-in office was in her 60s, with reading glasses on a chain and a cigarette that she kept forgetting to ash. "You girls here for the caves?" she asked. "That's the plan," Amy said. The woman nodded slowly, then marked something in her ledger. "Main cave tours are good. Stick to those. The park has lots of little caves and sinkholes off the trails. Don't go poking around in those." "Why not?" I asked. She looked up at me, and there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. "People get lost. Every year, someone wanders into one of those unmapped caves thinking they're being adventurous. Search and rescue has to go in after them. Sometimes they find them, sometimes they don't. We'll stick to the tours," I promised. We parked the RV in Site 14. The neighboring sites were empty. Apparently, late September wasn't peak camping season. The trees pressed in close on all sides, mostly oak and hickory. It was quiet, really quiet. No highway noise, no neighbors, just the occasional bird and the wind through the leaves. That first night was fine. We grilled hot dogs on the fire pit, drank wine from plastic cups, and talked until after midnight. Amy told me about her therapy sessions, about how Marcus had made her feel small and stupid. I told her she deserved better. She asked about my life, and I realized I didn't have much to say. Work, apartment, occasional dates that went nowhere. "You need to live a little, Jules," she said, poking the fire with a stick. "I'm here, aren't I?" She smiled at that. "Yeah, you are." We went to bed around 1. I took the fold-out bed in the back. Amy took the one over the cab. The RV creaked and settled in the night. I could hear her breathing above me, could hear the wind in the trees outside. It took me a long time to fall asleep. The next morning, we drove to the visitor center and signed up for the historic tour. 2 hours underground, walking through massive chambers and narrow passages. The tour guide was enthusiastic and knowledgeable. The cave was impressive, I'll give it that. Huge rooms with stalactites and stalagmites, underground rivers, places where the ceiling disappeared into darkness above our heads. But it was the darkness that got to me, not the darkness we walked through with our flashlights and the guide's lantern. The darkness beyond that, the kind you could feel pressing in from all sides, the kind that had been there for millions of years and would be there long after we left. I'm not claustrophobic, but down there, I started to understand how someone could be. Amy loved it. She took dozens of photos, asked the guide questions, wanted to know about the unmapped sections of the cave system. Mammoth Cave is the longest cave system in the world, the guide said. Over 400 miles mapped so far, but there's probably hundreds more miles we haven't found yet. Every year, cavers discover new passages. Do people ever go into the unmapped sections? Amy asked. The guide smiled politely. Only authorized research teams. It's extremely dangerous, easy to get lost, and the passages can be tight. We've had fatalities over the years. After the tour, we grabbed lunch at a diner in Cave City and drove back to the campground. It was 3 p.m. The campground still seemed empty. I hadn't seen anyone else since we arrived. Want to go for a hike? Amy asked. Sure. We took one of the trails that branched off behind the campground. It wasn't an official park trail, just a dirt path winding through the woods. The trees were thick here, blocking out most of the sunlight. The trail was covered in leaves, and we had to watch our footing. After about 20 minutes, Amy stopped. Do you hear that? I listened. There was a faint sound, like wind moving through a tunnel. Yeah, what is it? I think there's a cave entrance near here. Amy, the woman at the office said. She said don't go into unmapped caves, we're just going to look. She was already pushing through the underbrush, following the sound. I followed her because that's what I always did. The wind tunnel sound got louder. After another few minutes, we found it. A hole in the ground about 6 feet across, partially hidden by fallen branches and overgrown with moss and vines. The sound was coming from inside, air moving in and out, like the cave was breathing. Amy knelt at the edge and shined her phone's flashlight down. The hole dropped straight down about 10 feet, then seemed to open into a larger space. We should go back, I said. It's not even that deep. Look, there's a ledge right there, Amy. She looked up at me and I saw that expression, the one she'd had since we were kids, right before she did something reckless. 10 minutes. We just climb down, look around, climb back up. Come on, Jules. When are we going to get another chance like this? I should have said no. I should have been the responsible one, the older sister, the one who followed the rules. But Amy was looking at me like she used to when we were kids, like I was the only person in the world who understood her, who would follow her into anything. 10 minutes, I said. The climb down wasn't difficult. There were natural footholds in the rock, and it was only about 10 feet. We dropped into a small chamber, maybe 20 feet across. The air was cool and damp and smelled like minerals and earth. Our phone lights carved weak circles in the darkness. The wind sound was louder here, coming from a passage at the far end of the chamber. This is amazing, Amy whispered. The passage was about 4 feet high. We had to crouch to move through it. I wanted to turn back, but Amy was already ahead of me, and I didn't want to be alone in that first chamber. The passage curved and descended, the sound of wind growing louder and then fading. After maybe 50 feet, it opened into another chamber, this one bigger. Our lights couldn't reach the ceiling. The floor was uneven, covered in loose rocks and what looked like old bones. Probably animals that had fallen in and couldn't get out. The air felt different here. Thicker somehow. Older. Amy, we should go back now. Just a minute. She was moving toward the far side of the chamber, where another passage opened. This one was wider, almost like a hallway, and there was something about it that bothered me. It looked too regular, too intentional, like it had been carved rather than formed naturally. Amy, seriously, we've been down here more than 10 minutes. She stopped and turned back toward me, and her face in the flashlight glow looked strange, excited but also frightened. Do you feel that? Feel what? I don't know. Something. I felt it then. A sensation like pressure changing, like right before a thunderstorm. The air seemed to thicken even more. And there was a sound. Not the wind this time, but something else. Something that might have been breathing or might have been my imagination. "We're leaving," I said. "Now." Amy didn't argue. We made our way back through the narrow passage and climbed out of the entrance hole. The sunlight seemed shockingly bright. I realized we'd been down there almost 30 minutes, not 10. "That was incredible," Amy said as we walked back to the campground. I didn't answer. I was thinking about that passage, the way it had looked carved, the pressure in the air, the breathing sound that wasn't breathing. Back at the RV, we made dinner and sat outside as the sun set. The temperature dropped quickly. Amy built another fire and we sat close to it, drinking beer and watching the flames. "Thanks for coming with me down there," Amy said. "I know it's not really your thing. It's fine. You ever feel like your life is just passing you by? Like you're watching it happen instead of living it?" "Sometimes." That's how I felt with Marcus. Like I was just going through the motions, waiting for something to start. But down in that cave, I felt alive. Does that make sense? "Yeah," I said, though I wasn't sure it did. We went to bed around 11. I was exhausted but couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that carved passage, about the way the air had felt. At some point, I must have dozed off because I woke to Amy shaking my shoulder. Jules, wake up." I sat up. "What? What's wrong?" "Come outside, you need to see this." She was already dressed. I pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt and followed her out of the RV. It was still dark, maybe 3 or 4 in the morning. The fire had died to embers. Amy's phone flashlight was on, pointed at the ground near our picnic table. "Look at your shadow," she said. I stepped into the light. On the ground, clear as anything, was Amy's shadow. But where mine should have been, there was nothing. Just empty dirt. I waved my arms, jumped, moved around the light source. Nothing. "It's the angle," I said, "or the phone light isn't bright enough." Amy walked to the RV and turned on the exterior lights. They flooded the campsite with bright white light. Her shadow appeared instantly sharp and dark. Mine didn't. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "That's not possible. I noticed it when I got up to pee. You were standing by the door and the light was on and there was no shadow." "It's a trick of the light," I said. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. I could see Amy's shadow moving with her. I could see the shadows of the trees and the picnic table in the RV. But when I stood in the light, there was nothing. "Did something happen in the cave?" Amy asked. "Did you feel anything weird?" "No, I mean the pressure thing, but we both felt that. Maybe we should go to a hospital." "And tell them what? That I lost my shadow? They'll think we're on drugs." We stood there for a long time, both of us staring at the absence where my shadow should have been. Finally, Amy turned off the lights. "Maybe it'll come back," she said. "Maybe it's just temporary." But I knew it wouldn't. Something in that cave had taken it. I didn't know how or why, but I knew it was gone. We didn't sleep for the rest of the night. We sat in the RV drinking coffee and not talking about what we both knew was impossible. When the sun came up, Amy insisted on trying again. We stood outside in the early morning light, and again, her shadow was there and mine wasn't. "We need to go back to that cave," Amy said. "Are you insane?" "Whatever happened to you, it happened down there. Maybe if we go back, we can fix it. Or maybe something worse will happen." "Jules, you don't have a shadow. Do you understand that? Do you understand how wrong that is?" I did understand. I'd been trying not to think about it. But I did understand. It wasn't just that it was impossible. It was that it was fundamentally wrong. Like some basic rule of reality had been broken, and I was the proof. We drove to the visitor center and tried to explain to the ranger what had happened, leaving out the part about going into an unmapped cave. The ranger looked at us like we were crazy, which was fair. He walked us outside into the parking lot and asked me to stand in the sun. "You have a shadow," he said, pointing down. I looked. There it was, faint but visible. My shadow. Amy saw it too. "Oh, thank God," she said. But I knew something was wrong. The shadow looked right, but it didn't feel right. Like it was there, but not there. A copy of something instead of the real thing. We drove back to the campground. The relief Amy felt lasted until we got back to our site and I stepped into the shade under the trees. The shadow disappeared again. "It's only there in direct sunlight," Amy said. "That's not how shadows work." "I know." We spent the rest of the day testing it. In direct sunlight, the strong midday sun, my shadow appeared, though it always looked slightly faint, slightly wrong. But in any other light, shade, clouds, artificial light, it was gone completely. That night, Amy wanted to go back to the cave. I refused. We argued about it until we were both exhausted, and finally, she went to bed angry. I sat outside alone, watching the fire and trying to understand what had happened to me. Around midnight, I heard Amy get up and leave the RV. I figured she was going to the bathroom, but after 10 minutes, she still hadn't come back. I went looking for her. She wasn't in the bathroom. She wasn't anywhere in the campground. I called her name, quietly at first, then louder. No response. I went back to the RV and grabbed my phone, tried calling her. It went straight to voicemail. I knew where she'd gone. I found a flashlight and headed up the trail toward the cave. The woods were completely dark and the flashlight beam seemed pathetically weak. I kept calling Amy's name. The wind picked up, and the trees creaked and swayed overhead. When I reached the spot where the cave entrance should have been, I couldn't find it. The underbrush looked different. The trees seemed to have shifted. I spent 20 minutes searching, getting increasingly frantic before I finally found the hole in the ground. The branches and vines that had partially covered it before were pulled aside. "Amy!" I shouted into the darkness. My voice echoed back, distorted. I shined the flashlight down. I could see the ledge we'd climbed onto, but nothing beyond that. I should have climbed down. I should have gone after her. But I couldn't make myself do it. The cave felt wrong in a way I can't properly describe. Like it was waiting, like it wanted me to come down. I went back to the campground and told the woman in the office that my sister was missing. She called the park rangers. 2 of them showed up within an hour. I explained that Amy had wandered off in the night, that I'd looked for her but couldn't find her. I didn't mention the cave. They searched through the night and into the next morning, a team of 6 rangers and volunteers combing the woods around the campground. Around noon, one of them found her. She was sitting on a fallen log about a quarter mile from the cave entrance, staring at nothing. When they brought her back, she looked at me like she'd never seen me before. "Amy?" I said. "Hi, Jules," she said and smiled. The ranger asked her what had happened, where she'd been. She said she'd woken up and couldn't sleep, so she'd gone for a walk. She must have gotten turned around in the dark. She'd sat down to wait for daylight and must have dozed off. It was a reasonable explanation. The rangers seemed satisfied. They checked her for injuries, gave her some water, and reminded us to stay on the trails. After they left, Amy went into the RV and took a shower. I waited outside, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. She was back. She was safe. Whatever had happened to my shadow was a separate issue, something I'd deal with later. But when Amy came out of the shower, I knew something was wrong. She moved differently. Her gestures were slightly off, like she'd studied how a person moves but hadn't quite mastered it. And her eyes, they looked at me, but there was something absent in them, some essential spark that made her Amy. "You went to that cave, didn't you?" I said. "I went for a walk. Amy, please, tell me what happened." She tilted her head, and the movement was all wrong. Too smooth, too calculated. "I'm hungry. Let's make breakfast." We made eggs and toast in the tiny RV kitchen. She ate mechanically, chewing each bite exactly 20 times before swallowing. She'd never done that before. She drank her coffee black, even though she always put cream and sugar in it. When I pointed this out, she looked confused. "I've always liked it black," she said. "No, you haven't." She smiled again, and the smile was like a mask. People change, Jules. I decided we needed to leave. I told her I wasn't feeling well, that we should pack up and head home early. She agreed without argument, which also wasn't like her. We broke camp and started the drive back to Louisville. Halfway there, as we were driving through a small town called Horse Cave, Amy asked me to pull over. "I need to see a cave," she said. "What? No, we're going home. Just a quick stop. Hidden River Cave is right here. It'll take 20 minutes. Amy, please, Jules. I just need to see it." I should have kept driving, but part of me hoped that maybe if we went into another cave, maybe if we retraced our steps, something would fix itself. My shadow would come back. The real Amy would come back. Hidden River Cave was a commercial tour cave in the center of Horse Cave. We paid for tickets and joined a small group for the tour. The guide talked about the cave's history, about how it had been used for various purposes over the years. I barely listened. I was watching Amy. She kept touching the cave walls, running her fingers over the limestone. When we reached a section where the tour stopped for the guide to tell a story, Amy wandered away from the group toward a dark passage. I followed her. "Amy, we need to stay with the tour." She turned to me, and in the dim light, her face looked different. "Wrong. Do you know what you gave up?" "What are you talking about?" "In the cave. The first cave. You passed through something and it took payment. It always takes payment." "You're not making sense. Your shadow isn't gone, Jules. It's paying your toll. It's walking the dark places for you. But it's still part of you, and someday it's going to want back." "Who are you?" She smiled, and her teeth seemed too white in the darkness. "I'm your sister. Who else would I be?" The tour guide called back to us, asking if we were okay. I grabbed Amy's arm and pulled her back to the group. Her skin felt cold through her sleeve. We finished the tour in silence. When we got back to the RV, I told her we were going to a hospital. She refused. We argued. Finally, I told her I was going to call Mom and Dad, that they'd make her get checked out. "There's nothing wrong with me," she said, and her voice had an edge to it I'd never heard before. "I'm perfectly fine. Better than fine, actually. I feel clear. Like I've been living in fog my whole life, and now I can finally see." "See what?" "Everything. The way things really are. The spaces between things. The dark that holds everything together." I locked myself in the RV bathroom and called our mom. Told her something was wrong with Amy, that she'd gotten lost in the woods and now she was acting strange. Mom said she'd meet us at the hospital in Louisville. When I came out, Amy was gone. I searched the entire town, called her phone over and over. Finally, I drove back to Mammoth Cave because I knew that's where she'd go. I got to the campground around sunset. Site 14 was empty. We'd checked out that morning. I parked in the lot and hiked up the trail to the cave entrance. She was there, standing at the edge of the hole, looking down into it. "Amy," I said. She turned. "I'm going back down. You should come with me." "Please don't do this." "It's not scary, Jules. It's beautiful down there. Dark and old and perfect. And they're waiting." "Who's waiting?" "The ones who live in the deep places. The ones who've been here longer than us. Longer than everything." She stepped closer to the edge. "When you came out without your shadow, something came out with you. Something that needed a person-shaped space to fill. And I let it in. I don't understand. Your shadow is in the dark now, walking the places you can't go. And I'm going to join it. We'll both walk the dark places. We'll be free." "Amy, you're not making sense. You need help. Please, just come back to the RV with me. We'll figure this out." She looked at me with eyes that were my sister's but also weren't. "I can't come back, Jules. I belong to the dark now. But I wanted to see you one more time. The real you, not the thing that's going to take your place." "What thing?" "It's already happening. Every time you stand in shadow now, you're a little bit less. And every time you stand in sunlight, something else is a little bit more. Eventually, there won't be enough of the real you left. The thing will be all that remains." "You're lying." "Am I?" "Check your reflection sometime. Really look at it. She climbed down into the cave. I tried to follow, but when I reached the edge and looked down, the darkness seemed absolute, impenetrable. I couldn't see the ledge, couldn't see anything. "Amy!" I screamed into the hole. Nothing came back, not even an echo. I called the rangers again. They searched for 3 days. They brought in specialized cave rescue teams, technical climbers, expert cavers. They explored every accessible passage in the area. They found nothing. No trace of Amy. The cave I'd climbed down into with her wasn't on any map. Some of the search team said there was no cave there at all, just a natural depression in the ground. I stayed in Louisville for 2 weeks, in a hotel, waiting for news that never came. The police investigated but had no leads. Amy's phone had been turned off since the night she first disappeared from the campground. Her bank accounts hadn't been accessed. It was like she'd simply vanished. I tried to tell them about the cave, about what happened to my shadow, about how Amy had changed. They thought I was traumatized, possibly suffering from a breakdown. A kind detective suggested I see a therapist. Eventually, I had to go home. My life was in Portland. I had a job, an apartment, responsibilities. Mom and Dad stayed in Kentucky, organizing searches, putting up flyers, calling anyone who might help. But I knew they wouldn't find her. She was in the dark places now, walking somewhere I couldn't follow. That was 6 weeks ago. The shadow situation has gotten worse. In direct sunlight, I still have one, but it's getting fainter. Like a photocopy of a photocopy. And at night, or in artificial light, or in shade, nothing. People notice now. They don't say anything, but I can see them looking at the ground around me, at the empty space where something should be. And Amy was right about the reflection thing. When I look in a mirror, sometimes I see something that isn't quite me. The proportions are slightly off. The eyes are a bit too far apart. The smile doesn't reach the right parts of the face. It's subtle enough that I can convince myself I'm imagining it. But I know I'm not. I've been researching cave legends, folklore about shadows, stories about people who go into the ground and come back changed. There are more of them than you'd think. Every culture has variations. People who lose their shadows, people who lose their reflections, people who trade something essential for passage through dark places. The payment Amy talked about. The toll. I've started avoiding mirrors, started staying inside on sunny days. I work from home now. Told my boss I needed time to deal with my sister's disappearance, which is true enough. I keep the blinds closed. I use dim lamps. In that kind of light, I don't have to see the empty space where my shadow should be. But I know it's not a solution. I can feel something changing, like pieces of me are going somewhere else while something else fills in the gaps. My memories feel less solid. My emotions feel muted. I still love my sister, but the love feels distant, like I'm remembering how to feel it, rather than actually feeling it. Yesterday, I found myself standing in my kitchen in the dark, not remembering how I got there or what I was doing. I'd lost 2 hours, and when I turned on the light and looked at my reflection in the window, the thing looking back smiled at me with teeth that were just slightly too white. I'm writing this down because I need there to be a record. Evidence that I was real, that Julia Brown existed before something else started wearing her shape. I don't know how much longer I have before there's nothing left of me. Sometimes I think about driving back to Kentucky, finding that cave, climbing down into it and walking until I find Amy and my shadow and whatever took them both. Maybe that's where I belong now. Maybe that's the only way to be whole again. But I'm afraid, not of the darkness or what lives in it. I'm afraid that when I get down there, I'll realize I belong there, that the thing taking my place is better at being human than I ever was, that the dark places are where I was always meant to end up. Last night I had a dream. I was standing in a cave, not the one Amy and I found, but something bigger, older. The walls stretched up forever into blackness, and all around me, in the shadows, were people. Hundreds of them. Thousands. All standing perfectly still, all facing the same direction, all wearing human shapes but empty inside. And I saw Amy. She was standing in the center of them, and she looked happy. More than happy. Complete. She saw me and smiled. "Welcome home, Jules," she said. When I woke up, I checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The thing looking back was almost complete. It had my face, my eyes, my expression. But when I raised my hand to touch the glass, it raised its hand a half-second too late, and I knew. Soon I won't be able to tell the difference between it and me. Soon it will be me, and I'll be somewhere else. Walking the dark places, paying the toll. I'm trying to decide if that's a bad thing. The thing in the mirror smiled at me this morning. It looked happy, content, like it was excited to finally have a life, a body, a place in the light. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it will take better care of my life than I did. Maybe it will make better choices, be kinder, love more fully. Maybe I should let it have this. But then I remember Amy's face in that dream, and I wonder if she's happy, or if that's just what the dark makes you feel. If the contentment is real or just an echo of what happiness used to be. I don't know anymore. I don't know anything except that my shadow is gone, my sister is gone, and I'm going too. Piece by piece. Day by day. Standing in the light and feeling less real each time. Mom called yesterday. She wanted to know if I was okay. I told her I was fine. And the thing in the mirror nodded along with my words, agreeing, supporting the lie. Tonight, I'm going to leave my apartment door unlocked. I'm going to turn off all the lights and sit in the dark. And if the thing wants to finally take my place completely, I'm going to let it. Because maybe Amy was right. Maybe the dark places are where we belong, where we've always belonged. And maybe fighting against it is what's wrong, not giving in. I can feel it happening now as I write this. The memories getting softer. The emotions fading. Soon there won't be anything left but the shape of me, the shadow of me, and the thing that's been waiting in the dark will finally step into the light. I hope it's kinder than I was. I hope it loves my parents better. I hope it finds Amy and brings her home, even though I know that's impossible. The woman at the computer closed the laptop. Julia Brown's fingers had stopped moving 10 minutes ago, but she'd let the document autosave anyway. It was better to have a record. Evidence of the transfer. She stood up from the desk and walked to the bathroom mirror. The reflection looked back with Julia's eyes, Julia's face, Julia's expression. Perfect. Complete. Real. She smiled, and the reflection smiled with her, exactly synchronized. Outside, the sun was rising over Portland. Julia, or the thing that had taken her name and shape, walked to the window and opened the blinds. Light flooded the apartment. She stepped into it, and her shadow appeared on the floor. Dark, solid, perfectly real. She looked down at it and felt satisfaction. The toll had been paid. The trade was complete. Somewhere deep underground in Kentucky, in a cave that appeared on no maps, Julia Brown stood in the perfect darkness among thousands of others who had paid the same toll. She no longer remembered her name or her life or her sister. She only knew the dark. And the dark knew her. And in Portland, the thing that had taken her place picked up the phone and called Julia's mother. "Hi, Mom," it said, and the voice was perfect, loving, completely human. "I've been thinking, maybe we should organize another search for Amy. I just have this feeling that we shouldn't give up." Her mother's voice broke with relief and hope. "Oh, Jules, thank you. Thank you so much." The thing that wore Julia's face smiled. It would be a good daughter, a good person. It would live Julia's life better than Julia ever could. After all, it had paid everything to have this chance. And in the dark places beneath the earth, Julia Brown stood among the others and felt nothing at all. Not fear, not regret, not loss. Just the endless dark, pressing in from all sides, comfortable and complete and eternal. This is where she lived now. This is where she would always live. The toll had been paid. The trade was complete. And somewhere in between, in the space where light meets shadow, where the real world brushes against the dark, her shadow walked alone, searching for a body it would never find again. My name is Ava Johnson. I need to write this down while I still can, while I'm still sure which thoughts are mine. What happened at the Badlands started 3 months ago, but I'm only now able to talk about it. The therapist says writing helps. I don't think she understands what I'm trying to say. Maya and I had been planning the road trip since January. We'd both quit our jobs at the marketing firm in Minneapolis, her idea, not mine, and decided to spend the summer driving west. The RV was a 2015 Winnebago we found on Craigslist for $12,000. It needed work, but Maya's brother helped us get it running. We left on June 3rd. The first 2 weeks were fine. We drove through Wisconsin, then down through Iowa. We weren't in a hurry. Maya wanted to see Mount Rushmore, so we headed toward South Dakota. I remember arguing about it because I thought it was touristy, but she said we were already driving through the state anyway. We reached the Badlands on June 18th, a Tuesday. The RV park was called Cedar Pass Campground, though I don't remember seeing many cedars. It was mostly flat land with some rock formations in the distance. The woman at the check-in booth was maybe 60, with gray hair pulled back. She didn't smile much. She gave us a map of the campground and pointed to Site 47. "How long you staying?" she asked. "Just 2 nights, Maya said. The woman nodded and handed us a brochure about hiking trails. "Don't go out after dark," she said. "Easy to get turned around." I thought that was standard advice, but Maya laughed after we drove away. "Don't go out after dark? What is this, a horror movie?" Site 47 was at the far end of the campground, past the bathrooms and the small camp store. There were maybe 30 other RVs scattered around, but ours was the most isolated. A few scraggly trees provided some shade. We parked and leveled the RV. Then I made sandwiches while Maya set up the folding chairs outside. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet, just absent of sound. No birds, no insects, no wind. Maya didn't mention it, so I didn't either. We ate lunch and then decided to explore one of the shorter trails before it got too hot. The Notch Trail was supposed to take about 2 hours round trip. We brought water bottles and wore our hiking boots. The trail was empty except for one other couple we passed going the opposite direction. They were older, maybe in their 50s. The man nodded at us, but the woman didn't look up. Maya took photos of the rock formations. She wanted to post them on Instagram, but there was no cell service. "I'll upload them later," she said, taking another picture of the striped sediment layers. We finished the hike and got back to the RV around 4. I wanted to shower, but the campground bathrooms were a 5-minute walk, and Maya said we should wait until after dinner. So we sat in the folding chairs and drank beer from the cooler. That's when I first noticed the shadow thing, though I didn't realize what I was seeing at the time. The sun was behind us, about an hour from setting. Our shadows stretched out in front of the RV, long and distorted on the dirt. Maya was talking about whether we should drive to Mount Rushmore the next day or rest another day at the campground. I was only half listening because I was watching our shadows. Maya lifted her beer to her mouth. Her shadow didn't move. I blinked and looked again. The shadow was there, same as before, stretched out on the ground. But it was in a slightly different position than Maya. Her arm was raised, holding the beer bottle. The shadow's arm was at its side. "Did you see that?" I asked. "See what?" I pointed at the ground. Maya's shadow was normal now, matching her position exactly. "Never mind," I said. We cooked hot dogs on the camp stove for dinner. The other campers were starting evening fires. I could see smoke rising from several sites. Some people had strung up lights. There was a family with 2 kids a few sites over, and I could hear the children laughing. After dinner, Maya wanted to make a fire too. We bought some wood from the camp store, $5 for a small bundle, and tried to get it started. The wood was dry and we had newspaper and matches, but it wouldn't catch. We tried for 20 minutes. "Fuck it," Maya said eventually. "It's not even that cold." We gave up and went inside the RV. Maya wanted to play cards, but I was tired. I lay down on the bed in the back while she sat at the small table, looking through the hiking brochures. "There's a night sky program tomorrow," she said, "at the visitor center. Want to go?" Maybe. I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes, the RV was dark. Maya had turned off the lights. I could hear her breathing in the bed across from mine. We'd converted the dining area into a second sleeping space. I needed to use the bathroom. I didn't want to walk to the campground facilities in the dark, but the RV's bathroom was barely functional. We'd had plumbing issues since Iowa. I put on my shoes and grabbed the flashlight. "Maya," I whispered. She didn't respond. The campground was quiet. Most of the RVs had their lights off. A few still had fires going, just embers now. I walked quickly toward the bathroom building, the flashlight beam bouncing ahead of me. That's when I saw them. The shadows were everywhere, cast by the campground's security lights. But they were wrong. Some were stretched too long. Others were doubled, like each object was casting two shadows from a single light source, and some of them were moving independently. I stopped walking and pointed my flashlight at one of the nearby RVs. The shadow it cast on the ground shifted slightly, like someone had bumped into the RV from inside, but the RV itself was still. I walked closer, my heart speeding up. The shadow moved again, a subtle ripple along its edge, like it was breathing. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded strange in the empty campground. No one answered. The shadow stopped moving. I turned and walked quickly to the bathroom, trying not to look at any more shadows. Inside, the fluorescent lights were harsh and buzzing. I used the toilet and washed my hands, then stood at the sink for a moment, looking at my reflection. My shadow on the tiled floor was normal. It matched my position exactly. I walked back to the RV, keeping my eyes on the path ahead. Maya was still asleep. I climbed back into bed and lay there, staring at the ceiling. I told myself I'd been half asleep, that my eyes were playing tricks, but I knew what I'd seen. The next morning, Maya woke up before me. She was already dressed and making coffee when I opened my eyes. "Morning," she said. "Sleep okay?" "Fine," I lied. We decided to skip Mount Rushmore and do another hike instead. The woman at the check-in booth had mentioned the Castle Trail, which was longer but supposedly had better views. We packed lunch and filled our water bottles. The trailhead was about 10 minutes from our campsite. There were a few cars in the small parking area. Maya locked the RV and we started walking. The trail was easy at first, mostly flat with gradual inclines. We passed a group coming back, 3 middle-aged men who looked exhausted. One of them had a bandage on his arm. "How much further to the end?" Maya asked them. "About an hour," the man with the bandage said. He was staring at Maya in a way that made me uncomfortable. "Thanks," Maya said, and we kept walking. "That guy was weird," I muttered once we were out of earshot. "Everyone's weird when they're tired," Maya said. We hiked for another 45 minutes. The landscape was beautiful in an alien way, all exposed rock and eroded formations, colors ranging from deep red to pale yellow. I took some photos on my phone even though there was no service to send them. That's when Maya saw the dog. It was standing on a ridge about 50 feet above us, a medium-sized dog with brown fur, no collar that we could see. "Hey, buddy," Maya called out. She loved dogs. She'd had one growing up, a golden retriever named Biscuit who died when she was in college. The dog didn't move. It just stood there staring down at us. "Must be with some hikers," I said. "We should make sure he's not lost," Maya said. She started climbing up toward the ridge, using rocks as handholds. "Maya, wait!" But she was already halfway up. I followed her, annoyed. This was how Maya operated, impulsive decisions that I had to go along with. When we reached the ridge, the dog was gone. "Where'd it go?" Maya asked, looking around. The ridge was narrow with steep drops on either side. There was nowhere for a dog to have gone without us seeing it. "Maybe it went down the other side," I said, though that didn't make sense either. Maya walked along the ridge, calling for the dog. I stayed where I was, getting a bad feeling about the whole situation. "Maya, we should go back." "Just a minute," she said. I watched her walk further along the ridge. The sun was directly overhead now, and the shadows were short and dense. Maya's shadow stretched behind her, darker than it should have been in the bright light. Then I saw it happen clearly this time, no ambiguity. Maya stopped walking and bent down to examine something on the ground. Her shadow continued forward for 3 more steps before stopping. I felt my stomach drop. Maya. She stood up and turned around. What? Come back here. Now. She must have heard something in my voice because she didn't argue. She walked back toward me and I watched her shadow the entire time. It moved with her now, matching her steps exactly. What's wrong? She asked when she reached me. I didn't know how to phrase it. Did you notice anything weird just now? Like what? Your shadow. It moved wrong. Maya looked down at her shadow, then back at me. Ava, are you feeling okay? Did you drink enough water? I'm fine. I know what I saw. The heat can mess with your head, Maya said gently. Let's head back. We hiked back in silence. I knew Maya thought I was dehydrated or getting heat stroke, and maybe part of me wanted to believe that. But I knew what I'd seen. The shadow had moved independently, no question. When we got back to the RV, Maya insisted I drink water and lie down. I did, partly to avoid arguing. She went to take a shower at the campground facilities while I rested. I must have fallen asleep because when I woke up it was late afternoon. The RV was hot and stuffy. Maya wasn't back yet. I checked my phone. 4:37 p.m. She'd been gone over an hour just to shower. I put my shoes on and walked toward the bathroom building. The campground was busier now, people preparing dinner at their sites. A man was washing his RV. A woman was walking a small dog on a leash. Not the dog we'd seen on the trail, a different one. The bathrooms were empty, no sign of Maya. I walked back toward our site, taking a different route past the camp store. That's when I saw her. She was standing near one of the other RVs talking to someone I couldn't see. I walked closer, about to call out to her, when I realized something was wrong. The way she was standing was wrong. Her posture was too straight, too rigid, and she was perfectly still, not shifting her weight or moving at all, like someone had paused a video. Maya? I called out. She turned toward me. Her face was normal, same features, same expression, but something about it was off, like someone doing a very good impression of Maya. Hey, she said. I was just talking to the neighbors. I looked around, but there was no one else there. What neighbors? They just went inside, Maya said, gesturing at the RV behind her. Nice people, from Nebraska. We walked back to our site together. Maya seemed normal now, talking about what we should make for dinner, whether we had enough propane for the stove. But I kept watching her shadow on the ground and I kept noticing small things. The shadow moved a fraction of a second after she did. When she gestured with her hand, the shadow's hand moved in a slightly different direction. When she turned her head, the shadow turned a moment later. I think we should leave tomorrow, I said when we got back to the RV. Why? We paid for 2 nights. I just think we should. Maya looked at me with concern. Ava, you're acting really paranoid. Is this about the shadow thing again? You don't see it? See what? Shadows are shadows. They do what they're supposed to do. But even as she said it, I could see her shadow on the side of the RV behind her, and it was smiling while Maya's face remained neutral. We made pasta for dinner on the camp stove. Maya did most of the cooking while I sat in one of the folding chairs trying to act normal. The sun was setting, and the shadows were getting longer. I tried not to look at them. After dinner, Maya wanted to try the fire again. Maybe last night's wood was damp, she said. We arranged the wood and newspaper in the fire ring. Maya lit it with a match. The fire caught immediately this time, flames rising quickly. See? Maya said, smiling. Just needed dry wood. We sat in the chairs watching the fire. The other campers had fires going too. I could see the orange glow from their sights, hear the faint sound of conversation and laughter. Everything seemed normal, like a regular camping trip. I'm sorry I've been weird, I said. It's okay. I know I dragged you into this trip. You didn't drag me. I wanted to come. Maya poked at the fire with a stick. Remember when we used to camp in high school? That trip to Lake Superior? Yeah. That was fun. We should have done more trips like that. We sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. The sky was getting dark. Then I noticed Maya's shadow on the ground, cast by the firelight. It was sitting in the chair like she was, but its head was turned toward me while Maya was looking at the fire. The shadow was watching me. I stood up quickly, knocking my chair backward. "What?" Maya asked, startled. "I need to go inside." I went into the RV before she could respond. I could hear her calling after me, but I closed the door and locked it. My hands were shaking. I sat on the bed and tried to think rationally. Shadows don't move independently. Shadows don't watch people. I was overtired, stressed from the trip, maybe dehydrated like Maya said. There had to be a logical explanation. Maya knocked on the door. "Ava, come on, open up." "I'm fine, I just need a minute." "You're scaring me." I didn't respond. I heard her try the door handle, then walk away. A minute later, I heard the folding chair scrape as she sat back down. I lay on the bed and closed my eyes. I needed to sleep, to reset. In the morning, we'd leave. We'd drive to Waldrug or wherever, get away from this campground. Everything would be fine. I don't know what time I fell asleep, but I woke up to complete darkness. The RV was quiet. I fumbled for my phone. 2:14 a.m. Maya's bed was empty. I got up and looked out the window. The campfire was out, just faint embers. The folding chairs were empty. No sign of Maya. I put my shoes on and grabbed the flashlight. Outside, the campground was dark and silent. The security lights cast long shadows everywhere. I forced myself not to look at them. "Maya," I called out softly. No response. I walked toward the bathroom building, thinking maybe she'd gone there. But halfway there, I saw something that made me stop. There were people gathered near one of the other RVs. Maybe 8 or 10 of them, standing in a loose circle. They weren't moving or talking, just standing there in the dark. I walked closer, shining my flashlight. They didn't react to the light. Then I saw Maya. She was standing in the circle with them. "Maya!" I ran toward her. She turned to look at me. The flashlight beam illuminated her face, and I saw that same wrong expression. Too neutral, too still. "What are you doing out here?" I asked, grabbing her arm. She didn't answer. None of them did. They just stood there, staring at me with blank faces. I pulled Maya away from the group, and she followed without resistance. We walked back to our RV, and I kept checking over my shoulder to see if anyone was following us. They weren't. They just stood there in their circle. Inside the RV, I locked the door and turned on all the lights. Maya sat on her bed, still with that blank expression. "Maya, what's wrong with you? What were you doing out there?" She blinked slowly, then seemed to come back to herself. "What? When did we come inside?" "Just now. You were standing outside with those people." "What people?" "The campers. They were in a circle near site. I don't know. Somewhere in the middle of the campground." Maya looked confused. "I don't remember going outside." "You don't remember?" "I was sleeping. Then I was here." "Did I sleepwalk?" I stared at her, trying to figure out if she was lying. But Maya wasn't a good liar. She looked genuinely confused. "We're leaving," I said. "Right now. We're packing up and leaving." "Ava, it's the middle of the night." "I don't care." I started throwing our things into bags. Maya watched me for a moment, then started helping. We packed quickly, shoving clothes and food into whatever bags we could find. I didn't care about being organized. When we were ready, I got into the driver's seat. Maya sat in the passenger seat, quiet. I started the engine and turned on the headlights. That's when I saw them. The shadow people, or whatever they were standing around the RV. Not the actual people, just their shadows cast by the RV's headlights. But they had no sources, no bodies creating them. Just shadows standing there, dozens of them surrounding us. "Ava," Maya said quietly. "Do you see?" "Yes." I put the RV in reverse and backed up slowly, trying not to hit any of the shadows. They moved out of the way, gliding smoothly across the ground. I shifted into drive and headed toward the exit. The shadows followed us, running alongside the RV. I could see them in the side mirrors, dark figures keeping pace with us even as I accelerated. They moved wrong, jerky and fluid at the same time, like stop-motion animation. I drove faster, not caring about the speed limit in the campground. The RV bounced over ruts in the dirt road. Maya gripped the dashboard, not saying anything. We reached the exit gate, which was closed. There was a small booth next to it, but no one was inside. I stopped the RV and got out, running to the gate. There was a manual latch. I lifted it and pushed the gate open, then ran back to the RV. The shadows were closer now. I could see them clearly in the headlights, human-shaped but with no features, just darkness that moved. They were reaching toward the RV. I jumped back in and drove through the open gate. The shadows didn't follow us past it. They stopped at the boundary, standing in a line, watching us leave. I drove for 20 minutes before pulling over at a rest stop. We sat in the parking lot, engine running, neither of us speaking. Finally, Maya said, "What the fuck was that?" "I don't know. Those were shadows, just shadows. That's not possible." "I know." We stayed at the rest stop until dawn. I couldn't sleep, just sat in the driver's seat, watching the sky gradually lighten. Maya dozed in the passenger seat. When the sun came up, I started driving again. We headed west, away from the Badlands, not really having a destination. We just needed to get distance. We stopped for breakfast at a truck stop somewhere in Wyoming. Inside the diner, Maya went to the bathroom while I ordered coffee. I sat in a booth by the window looking out at the parking lot. That's when I saw it, Maya's reflection in the window. She was standing behind me, looking down at me with that same blank expression. But Maya was still in the bathroom. I could see the bathroom door from where I sat, and it hadn't opened. I turned around. No one was there. When I looked back at the window, the reflection was gone. Maya came back a minute later and slid into the booth across from me. "They didn't have any towels," she said. "I had to use toilet paper to dry my hands." I studied her face, trying to see any sign that something was wrong. She looked normal. She ordered pancakes and ate them quickly, talking about whether we should find a new campground or just drive straight through to California. But I kept noticing little things. The way she held her fork was slightly different than usual. The way she laughed at something on her phone, a half-second too late, like she was imitating the sound. The way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, assessing, calculating. We paid and left. In the parking lot, I saw our shadows on the pavement. Mine looked normal. Maya's was slightly offset, like it was standing a foot to the left of where she actually was. We got back in the RV. Maya wanted to drive for a while, so we switched places. I sat in the passenger seat watching her. She drove normally, checking mirrors, using turn signals, maintaining the speed limit. Everything was fine. Except when she moved her head to check the blind spot, her shadow on the driver's side window moved first, anticipating the motion by a fraction of a second. We drove for 3 more days, stopping at campgrounds and rest stops. Maya seemed normal most of the time, joking around, taking photos, planning our route. But the shadow thing kept happening. Small discrepancies between what she did and what her shadow did. Sometimes the shadow would be in a different position entirely, like it was showing what she would do next or what she wanted to do but didn't. I started taking pictures of her when she wasn't looking, trying to capture it on camera. But in the photos, everything looked normal. The shadow matched her perfectly. On the 4th day, we were at a campground in Idaho. Maya was outside, grilling chicken on a portable grill we'd bought at Walmart. I was inside the RV looking through the window at her. Her shadow on the ground was waving at someone. Maya wasn't waving. She was just standing there, flipping the chicken with tongs. I went outside. "Who are you waving at?" "What?" Maya looked at me, confused. "Your shadow was waving." "Ava, stop." "I'm serious. I saw it." Maya put down the tongs and turned to face me. "You need to stop this. You're becoming obsessed. Shadows don't move on their own. It's not possible." "Then how do you explain what happened at the Badlands?" "I don't know what happened. Maybe we were both overtired. Maybe there was some weird lighting thing. But shadows don't move independently. That's not how physics works. I know what I saw." "You need help." Maya said not unkindly. "I think you should talk to someone when we get home." But I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew what I was seeing, and I was starting to suspect that Maya knew too. That night, I pretended to fall asleep. I lay in my bed with my eyes closed, breathing slowly and evenly. I heard Maya moving around the RV, brushing her teeth, changing into pajamas, getting into her bed. After about 20 minutes, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her get up. I cracked my eyes open just enough to see. Maya was standing in the middle of the RV, perfectly still, with her back to me. The moonlight coming through the windows cast her shadow on the floor. The shadow was moving. It raised its arms above its head, then bent down, then stood up straight again. It moved fluidly, like it was stretching or performing some kind of ritual. But Maya's body remained completely still. I must have made a sound because Maya turned around. Our eyes met. "You're awake," she said. "What are you doing?" "Nothing. Going to the bathroom." But she didn't move toward the bathroom. She just stood there looking at me, and her shadow continued moving on the floor, independent of her body. "That's not you," I said. "What?" "That's not you. I don't know what you are, but you're not Maya." Maya, or whatever was wearing her face, tilted her head slightly. "Don't be ridiculous. Prove it. Tell me something only Maya would know." "This is stupid. Tell me what you were wearing the day we met." "In college. First day of orientation." It didn't answer right away. Then, "A blue shirt." "What kind of blue shirt?" "I don't remember exactly. It was years ago." Maya would remember. She told me about that shirt 100 times. It was a vintage Fleetwood Mac shirt she got at Goodwill. She wore it specifically to seem cool. The thing wearing Maya's face smiled, but it was wrong, too wide, too sharp. "You're being paranoid." "Get away from me. Ava, calm down. Get away from me." I jumped out of bed and ran to the door. It was locked from the inside, and I fumbled with the latch while the thing, walked slowly toward me. I got the door open and ran outside. The campground was dark and quiet. I could see other RVs, but no lights in any windows, no signs of life. I ran toward the campground office, hoping to find help. Behind me, I heard the RV door open and close. Footsteps following me. The office was locked and dark. I banged on the door. "Help! Someone help me!" No one came. I turned around. Maya was standing about 20 feet away, just watching me. Her shadow stretched toward me on the ground, reaching with long, dark fingers. "Please," I said. "Please, I just want my friend back." "Your friend is right here," Maya said. "No, you're not her." Maya walked closer. "Do you want to know what really happened at the Badlands?" I didn't answer. "It's not that complicated," she continued. "The shadows there have been waiting for a long time, waiting for people to notice them. Most people don't. They look right at us and don't see. But you saw, and once you see, we can see you back. We, the shadows, we're not what you think we are. We're not supernatural or evil. We just are. We've always been here, attached to you, following you, copying you. Most of you never realize. But you did." "What did you do to Maya?" "Nothing. She's still here. I'm just borrowing her sometimes, using her body when she's not fully present. You do it too, you know, everyone does. Those moments when you zone out, when you're not really there, that's when we can step in." I felt sick. "That's not possible." "It is, though. It happens more than you know. Haven't you ever felt like you weren't in control of your body? Like you were watching yourself do things but not really doing them? I had. Everyone had." "Let her go," I said. "I can't. Neither can you. This is just what we are now. What we've always been, really. You just didn't notice before." Maya reached out her hand. Her shadow reached out too, but in a different direction. "Come back to the RV, Ava. Let's finish our trip." I backed away. "No." "Where will you go?" I didn't know. I turned and ran into the darkness, away from the campground into the trees beyond. I could hear Maya, the thing, following me, but I didn't look back. I ran until I couldn't run anymore, until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I collapsed against a tree, gasping for air. The forest was silent. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just like the Badlands. I pulled out my phone. No service, but I used the flashlight. I shined it around me, looking for a path, for anything. That's when I saw them. Shadows everywhere, attached to nothing. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, standing between the trees. Human-shaped, animal-shaped, shapes I couldn't identify, all standing perfectly still, watching me. I turned off the flashlight. In the darkness, I could still see them. Darker shapes against the dark, somehow visible despite having no light source. They didn't move. They just watched. I sat there for hours, maybe longer. I lost track of time. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep because when I opened my eyes again, it was dawn. The shadows were gone. I was alone in the forest. I found my way back to the campground. The RV was still there, parked in our spot. The door was closed. I walked up to it slowly, not sure what I would find. Inside, Maya was asleep in her bed. She looked peaceful, normal. I watched her for a moment, then looked down at my own shadow on the floor. It was standing in a different position than I was. It was turned toward Maya's bed, watching her while I was looking at my feet. I looked up at myself in the small mirror by the door. I looked tired, scared, normal. But my shadow in the mirror was smiling. That was 3 months ago. We finished the road trip. We drove to California like we planned, spent a week in San Francisco, then drove back to Minneapolis. Maya never mentioned what happened at the Badlands, and neither did I. We acted like everything was normal. But it's not normal. I know that now. I watch my shadow all the time now. I can't help it. Most of the time it looks right, matching my movements exactly. But sometimes, maybe once a day, maybe less, I'll catch it doing something I'm not doing. Turning its head, moving its hand, smiling when I'm not. Maya's shadow is the same. I've watched her carefully and I see the discrepancies. She doesn't seem to notice. Or maybe she does, and she's just better at hiding it. The therapist says I have some kind of dissociation disorder triggered by stress. She's prescribed medication. I haven't taken it yet, because here's the thing. Everyone's shadows do it. Once you start looking, you see it everywhere. The barista at coffee shops, the person next to you on the subway, your co-workers, your family, strangers on the street, all their shadows, moving just slightly wrong, anticipating movements, making gestures their owners don't make, watching things their owners aren't watching. We're all being borrowed, used, copied. The thing at the Badlands was right. It happens in those moments when we're not fully present, when we're tired or distracted or zoned out. That's when they step in. And the worst part is, I don't know if I'm me right now. I don't know if these are my thoughts or if I'm being used to write this. I don't know if I'm the one moving my hands or if my shadow is moving them for me. Sometimes I'll be doing something, making coffee, driving, having a conversation, and I'll suddenly become aware of myself, like waking up. And I'll realize I don't remember the last few minutes. I was there, doing things, but I wasn't really there. Is that me, or is that my shadow? I don't know how to tell anymore. Maya called yesterday. She wants to plan another trip, maybe to Yellowstone this time. She sounded excited, normal. She said it would be good for me, get me out of my head. I told her maybe. I didn't mention that while we were talking. I was watching my shadow on the wall. It was watching me back. I think I'll go. What else am I going to do? Stay home and watch my shadow move wrong in the privacy of my apartment. At least on the road there's the illusion of control, the illusion that I'm the one making decisions. But I'm not sure I am anymore. I'm not sure any of us are. I'm writing this down because I need to tell someone, even if they don't believe me. Even if they think I'm crazy. Because soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, I might not be able to. Soon the shadow might take over completely and I'll just be the thing it's copying. Or maybe I already am. I wish I could tell you how to stop it, how to protect yourself. But I can't. Because I don't think it can be stopped. I think it's always been this way. We just didn't notice. All I can say is, watch your shadow. Pay attention. Because the moment you stop paying attention is the moment it moves on its own. And once it starts moving, it never really stops. I'm going to Yellowstone with Maya next week. I'm going to finish this story the way it's supposed to finish. 2 friends on a road trip, having adventures, taking photos, making memories. And my shadow will be there too, doing all the same things. Or maybe it will be doing something different. Maybe it will be reaching for Maya while I smile at a sunset. Maybe it will be screaming while I laugh. I guess I'll find out. We all will eventually. Just remember to watch your shadow. That's all I can tell you. Watch your shadow and hope it doesn't notice you watching back. My name is Ethan Adams. At least I'm pretty sure it is. I keep having to check my driver's license to make certain, which should tell you something about what happened to me in Kentucky. I'm writing this down while I still can. While I still remember enough to make it coherent. The doctors say there's nothing physically wrong with me. No brain trauma, no tumors, no obvious neurological damage, but I'm forgetting things. Important things. And the forgetting is getting worse. It started 3 weeks ago at an RV park near Mammoth Cave. I'd driven down from Michigan in my beat-up 2008 Winnebago, planning to spend 2 weeks exploring the area before heading further south. I'm a freelance web developer, so I can work from anywhere with decent internet, and I'd been feeling burnt out. I needed to get away from my apartment, from my routine, from everything. The RV park was called Green River Campground, one of those smaller operations run by a local family rather than a chain. I picked it because it was cheap and had good reviews about being quiet. The main feature was that it sat about 8 miles from the official Mammoth Cave National Park entrance, but far enough out to avoid the tourist crowds. I pulled in on a Thursday afternoon in late October. The woman who checked me in was maybe 60, with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her name was Linda. I only remember that because I wrote it down in my phone right after. I've been writing everything down since this started. She gave me a map of the campground and assigned me to spot 17, near the back edge of the property where the forest started. There were maybe 35 or 40 spots total, and she said only about half were occupied that week. Off-season, she explained, gets real quiet around here after September. You picked a good time if you like peace and quiet. I did like peace and quiet. That was the whole point. The campground was laid out in a rough circle around a central building that housed the office, a small camp store, and bathrooms with showers. My spot was decent, level ground, electric hookup, water spigot nearby. The forest came right up to the edge of the gravel pad where I parked. I spent the first day just settling in and catching up on work. I had a project deadline on Monday, so I needed to get that finished before I could really relax. The internet was slower than I'd hoped, but functional. I worked until dark, made myself some pasta, and went to bed early. It was the next morning, Friday, when I met Sarah and Kyle. They were parked 2 spots over in a newer Class C motorhome. I was outside making coffee when they walked past on their way to the bathrooms. They looked to be in their early 30s, maybe a few years younger than me. Sarah had dark hair cut short, and Kyle was tall and thin with glasses. "Morning," Kyle said, giving me a friendly wave. "Morning," I replied. "Just get here?" Sarah asked. "Yesterday afternoon." "Us too," she said. "We're here for a week. You hiking the caves?" "Planning on it," I said, "once I finish up some work." We chatted for a few minutes. They were from Indianapolis, both teachers taking advantage of fall break to do some exploring. Nice people, normal people. I remember thinking that at the time, how completely normal they seemed. I finished my work project that afternoon and sent it off to the client. Then I spent Saturday actually relaxing. Took a short hike on one of the trails that started from the campground. Read a book. Did basically nothing. It felt good. That evening I ran into Sarah and Kyle again at the campground's small fire pit area. A few other campers were there too. An older couple from Tennessee, a guy traveling alone like me who said his name was Marcus. We sat around the fire for a while, talking about nothing important. Where we were from, where we'd been, places we wanted to go. Marcus mentioned he'd been exploring some of the unofficial trails in the woods behind the campground. "There's old mining roads back there," he said, "from before this area became part of the park system. Some of them go pretty deep into the hills." "Is that allowed?" Sarah asked. "I thought this was all protected land." "This particular section isn't actually park property," Marcus explained. "It's private land that the campground owner leases. You can hike it, you just can't camp overnight. I found some interesting stuff back there yesterday." "Like what?" Kyle asked. Marcus hesitated like he was deciding whether to share something. "Caves," he finally said. "Small ones, not connected to the main mammoth system. I found one that goes in pretty deep. Had my headlamp and went in maybe 50 yards before I decided to turn back." "Why'd you turn back?" I asked. Another hesitation. It felt weird, like the air pressure was wrong or something, made my ears ring. Sarah laughed. "Probably just your sinuses adjusting." "Probably." Marcus agreed, but he didn't sound convinced. The conversation moved on to other things. We sat around until the fire burned down, then everyone went back to their respective RVs. I remember lying in bed that night, hearing the wind in the trees outside, thinking about those caves Marcus had mentioned. I'm not a spelunker or anything, but there was something appealing about the idea of finding something unmapped, unexplored. The next morning, Sunday, I decided to look for them. I should mention that my memory of this part is clear. It's what comes later that gets fuzzy. But Sunday morning, I remember that fine. I had oatmeal for breakfast. I filled a water bottle. I put on hiking boots and grabbed my headlamp and phone. The weather was overcast but dry. Temperature maybe in the mid-50s. I walked to the back edge of the campground where the forest began, found a trail marker that looked unofficial, and started following it. The trail was obvious enough at first, an old roadbed probably from the mining operations Marcus had mentioned. Trees had grown up on both sides, but the path itself was still clear. I walked for maybe 30 minutes, gradually climbing in elevation. The forest was quiet, no birds singing, which I noticed but didn't think much about at the time. It was late October. Maybe they'd migrated already. I almost walked right past it. The cave entrance was off to the left of the trail, hidden behind a screen of brush. I only noticed it because I'd stopped to check my phone's GPS and happened to glance that direction. There was a gap in the vegetation, and beyond it, darkness. I pushed through the brush and found myself standing in front of an opening in the limestone rock face. It wasn't large, maybe 4 feet high and 3 feet wide at the base, widening as it went up. But when I turned on my headlamp and pointed it inside, I couldn't see the back of the passage. This was stupid, I remember thinking. Going into an unmapped cave alone, without telling anyone where I was going. But I was curious, and the opening looked stable, and I told myself I'd just go in a little way, just far enough to see what was there. I ducked through the entrance and stepped inside. The passage sloped down at a gentle angle. The walls were limestone, dry to the touch, with some mineral deposits in places. The ceiling got higher after the first few yards, enough that I could stand upright. My headlamp beam reached maybe 20 feet ahead before dissolving into darkness. I kept going. After about 50 feet, the passage opened into a larger chamber. I swept my light around. The space was roughly circular, maybe 20 feet across. The ceiling disappeared above my light's range. There were 3 other passages leading off from the chamber, all about the same size as the entrance I'd come through. That's when I noticed the hum. It was very faint at first. I thought maybe it was my ears ringing from the change in air pressure, like Marcus had mentioned. But as I stood there in the silence, I realized it wasn't coming from inside my head. It was coming from deeper in the cave. A low, steady vibration, right at the edge of hearing. I should have left then. Something about that sound felt wrong. But instead I picked one of the 3 passages and kept going. I chose the middle one for no particular reason. It was narrower than the entrance passage, and I had to duck my head in places. The hum got slightly louder as I went deeper. Not much louder, but definitely more noticeable. The passage twisted and turned, descending at a steeper angle. I checked my phone. No signal, which was expected this far underground. I'd been walking for maybe 10 minutes since entering the cave. I should turn back, I thought. This is deep enough. But I didn't turn back. The passage opened into another chamber, smaller than the first one. And that's where I saw the marks. They were carved into the limestone wall, symbols or letters, I couldn't tell which. They didn't look like any alphabet I recognized, and they didn't look old. The edges of the carvings were sharp, not weathered. Someone had made them recently. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures, the camera flash creating harsh shadows on the wall. As I was looking at the screen to check if the photos had turned out okay, I realized something. The hum had gotten louder, not just a little louder, significantly louder. It was no longer at the edge of hearing. It was present, constant, almost like a physical pressure in my skull. And now that I was paying attention to it, I noticed something else. It wasn't consistent. It pulsed. Very slowly, but definitely pulsing. A rhythm that didn't match anything natural. I stood there in that small chamber, staring at those carved symbols, listening to that pulsing hum, and for the first time I felt genuinely afraid. I turned around and headed back the way I'd come. The passage seemed longer going back. It took me 15 minutes to reach the first chamber, when I was pretty sure it had only taken 10 on the way in. But caves are disorienting. I figured I was just moving more slowly because I was starting to feel anxious. When I reached the first chamber, I stopped. I couldn't remember which passage I'd come in through. All three looked identical. Same size, same angle, same everything. I pointed my headlamp at each one in turn, trying to spot some distinguishing feature, some mark that would tell me which was the right one, but there was nothing. The hum was still there, still pulsing. It seemed to be coming from all three passages at once now. I picked the passage on the left and started walking. After a few minutes, I emerged into another chamber. This one was the same size as the first chamber. It had 3 passages leading off from it, same as the first chamber. But I'd never seen this chamber before. I stood there trying to stay calm, trying to think logically. Okay, I told myself. You picked the wrong passage. Go back, try one of the others. I went back and tried the middle passage. It led to a chamber with 3 passages. I tried the right passage from there. Another chamber with 3 passages. I started to panic. I was lost. Completely, thoroughly lost. The cave was bigger than I'd thought, with multiple chambers that all looked the same. And the hum was getting louder with each passing minute. It was inside my head now, vibrating in my teeth, making it hard to think clearly. I checked my phone. Still no signal. Battery at 64%. I pulled up the compass app, trying to get some sense of direction, but the reading kept spinning. North would be in one place, then jump 90 degrees, then jump back. The magnetometer was going crazy. I kept moving, picking passages at random, trying to map them in my head, but I'd lost track. Every chamber looked the same. 3 passages. Always 3 passages. And then I couldn't remember why I was here. It hit me all at once. I stopped in the middle of a passage, or was it a chamber? I couldn't remember and realized I didn't know what I was doing. I was in a cave. I had a headlamp. I was looking for something, but I couldn't remember what. The hum pulsed in my skull, louder now, insistent. I looked at my phone. There were photos on it, recent photos, pictures of carved symbols on a stone wall. I must have taken these, but I didn't remember doing it. I opened my contacts list, scrolling through names. Some of them looked familiar. Others I couldn't place at all. There was one labeled Mom with a Michigan area code. That seemed important, but I couldn't think why. The hum pulsed again, and something else slipped away. A word I'd known a moment ago. A face. A feeling. Something. I started moving faster, fighting against the panic. I needed to get out. I needed to get back to something. There was somewhere I needed to be. Somewhere safe. I just had to find it. Another passage. Another chamber. 3 exits. I picked one. The passage started to slope upward. That was good, wasn't it? Up meant out. Up meant air and sky and... What was the word for that bright thing in the sky? The hum pulsed and the word was gone. I kept climbing. The passage got narrower. I had to crouch, then crawl. The stone scraped my hands, but I didn't feel it. The hum was everything now. It was the only sound in the universe. It was inside my bones. Then I saw light ahead. Real light. Not from my headlamp. Gray and diffused, but definitely coming from outside. I crawled faster, scrambling over loose rocks, pulling myself toward that light. The passage opened up and suddenly I was out, standing in the brush at the edge of a clearing, breathing hard, my hands bleeding from the rocks. I looked around. I was in a forest. There were trees. Behind me was the entrance to a cave. I didn't remember entering a cave. I checked my phone. It was 3:47 p.m. on Sunday, October 27th. The battery was at 34%. There were photos on it, symbols, carved into stone. I didn't remember taking these photos. I also didn't remember why I was here, in this forest with a headlamp in my hand and dirt on my clothes. I found a trail and followed it. After 20 minutes, I reached a cleared area with RVs parked in marked spots. A campground. There was a motorhome with Michigan plates and older Winnebago. Something about it seemed familiar. I walked to it and tried the door. It was unlocked. Inside, everything was neat and organized. There was a laptop on the small table, a coffee mug in the sink. On the dashboard was a rental agreement from the campground office, filled out with a name, Ethan Adams. Spot 17. I looked at my driver's license. Ethan Adams. Same name. This was my RV, I realized. I was staying here. I lived here. No, that wasn't right. I lived somewhere else and was visiting here. I sat down on the bed and tried to piece things together. I was at a campground in Kentucky. I had gone into a cave. There had been a humming sound. And now I couldn't remember. Things. Lots of things. The edges of my memory were fuzzy, full of gaps. I opened my phone and scrolled through recent calls. There was one to Mom from yesterday. I hit the call button. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. "Hi, honey," a woman's voice said. "How's Kentucky?" I started, then stopped. I didn't know what to say. "Ethan, you there?" "Yeah," I managed. "Sorry, just tired." "You feeling okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine. Just wanted to check in." We talked for a few minutes. She told me about her garden, about my sister's kids, about mundane things. I listened and made appropriate noises, but I was having trouble following what she was saying. The names she mentioned didn't connect to faces in my mind. After we hung up, I sat there for a while, trying to force my brain to work properly. There were things I should remember. Important things. But trying to grab hold of the memories was like trying to grab smoke. I heard voices outside. I looked out the window and saw 2 people walking past, a man and a woman, probably in their 30s. They waved when they saw me looking. I waved back. Should I know them? I stepped outside. The woman smiled at me. "Hey, Ethan, feeling better?" "Better," I repeated. "You looked pretty rough when you came back earlier," the man said. "We saw you stumbling around, thought maybe you'd gotten lost on your hike." "I did get lost," I said. "It happens," the woman said cheerfully. "These trails all look the same after a while." "I'm Sarah, by the way. This is Kyle. We met Friday night at the fire pit. You probably don't remember. There were a bunch of people there. I didn't remember, but I nodded anyway." "You should drink some water," Kyle suggested. "You look dehydrated." I went back inside and drank a bottle of water. Then I looked at my phone again, scrolling through text messages, trying to build a picture of my life. I worked in web development. I lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'd driven down here for a vacation. I was supposed to be here for 2 weeks. That evening, I stayed inside my RV. I could hear people talking outside, someone playing music, the normal sounds of a campground at night. But I didn't go out. I was trying to remember things. I pulled up the photos from inside the cave and studied them. The symbols carved into the wall looked deliberate, purposeful. They meant something. But what? I opened my laptop and searched for symbols, cave meaning, and similar phrases. Nothing matched what I'd photographed. I tried reverse image searching. Nothing. Around 9 p.m., someone knocked on my door. It was Sarah. She had a concerned expression. "Hey," she said. "Just wanted to check on you. Kyle and I were worried. You seemed pretty out of it this afternoon." "I'm okay," I told her. Loud now, I could barely hear him over it. It was in my bones, in my blood, pulsing with a rhythm that felt almost like it was trying to tell me something. "We should pick a direction and stick with it," Marcus said. "If we keep moving systematically, we'll find the exit eventually." He chose a passage. We walked. Another chamber. 3 passages. He picked another passage. Another chamber. We did this for what felt like hours. Every chamber was identical. Every passage looked the same, and none of them had his chalk marks. Marcus was starting to panic. I could see it in the way he moved, jerky and uncertain. He kept checking his compass and cursing when the reading spun wildly. "This isn't natural," he said. "Something's wrong with this cave. It's like I don't know, moving or something." The hum pulsed again, harder this time, and I felt something slip away. A piece of memory gone like smoke. I reached for it but couldn't grab hold. "We need to keep calm," I heard myself say. "Panicking won't help." Marcus looked at me. "How are you so calm? We're lost underground in a cave system that doesn't make any sense." "I've been here before," I said. The words came out automatically, like someone else was speaking through me. "Yesterday, I found my way out." "How?" I tried to remember, but the memory was gone. "I don't know. I just kept walking until I found an exit." "Then let's keep walking." We picked a passage at random and kept moving. Chamber after chamber after chamber, all identical. The hum grew louder with each one we passed through. And then Marcus stopped walking. He just stopped. In the middle of a passage, he froze in place, his light pointing at the ground. "Marcus?" I said. He didn't respond. I walked around to face him. His eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. His mouth was slightly open. "Marcus, can you hear me?" Nothing. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. It was like someone had pressed pause on him. Then, very slowly, his mouth started to move. His lips shaped words, but no sound came out at first. Then, barely audible under the hum. "Where am I?" "We're in a cave," I said. "We're trying to find the way out." "Cave," he repeated slowly, like he'd never heard the word before. "What is—" His voice trailed off. He looked down at his hands, turning them over slowly, studying them like they belonged to someone else. "Marcus, we need to keep moving." He looked up at me. His eyes were wrong. The expression in them was wrong. It was like looking at a person wearing a Marcus suit, something pretending to be him but not quite getting it right. "Who's Marcus?" he asked. "Oh God." "You are," I said. "Your name is Marcus. You're from Ohio. We came into this cave together." He stared at me for a long moment, processing. Then he smiled. It was the most unsettling thing I'd ever seen. His face moving into an expression of happiness that didn't reach his eyes, didn't touch the blankness behind them. "I don't remember," he said, "but okay. Marcus, that's me. Do you remember how to get out?" "Out," he repeated. Then he pointed down the passage. "That way." "Are you sure?" "No," he said, still smiling that empty smile. "But it feels right." We walked. Marcus, or whatever was left of Marcus, led the way. He moved differently now, more fluid, like he was still learning how his body worked. He kept looking at his hands, flexing his fingers. The hum was overwhelming. I could barely think past it. Memories kept slipping away, dissolving before I could hold on to them. Faces, names, pieces of my life eroding like sand. Another chamber. 3 passages. Marcus pointed to the right one without hesitation. "How do you know?" I asked. "I can hear it," he said. "Hear what?" "The way out. Can't you hear it calling?" I couldn't hear anything except the hum. We kept walking, passage after passage, chamber after chamber, but they weren't all identical anymore. Some were larger, some had more than 3 exits, some had fewer. The cave was changing around us, or we were moving into different sections. I couldn't tell which. I looked at my phone, battery at 12%. It was 7:43 p.m. We'd been down here for over 6 hours. My hands were shaking. I couldn't remember why I was here. There was a person with me, a man, but I couldn't remember his name. Had I known his name? Maybe. Maybe not. The man stopped and pointed. There. I looked. There was light ahead. Dim and gray, but definitely light from outside. We moved toward it. The passage sloped upward, getting steeper. I had to use my hands to climb. The light got brighter. Then we were out, standing in the forest, breathing real air. I turned to look at the man. Marcus, my mind supplied, though the name felt wrong somehow. He was staring up at the darkening sky with an expression of wonder. "I remember this," he said quietly. "Sky, trees, the big bright thing." "The sun," I said. "It's setting." "Sun," he repeated. "Yes." We walked back to the campground in silence. The hum was still there in my head, but quieter now that we were out of the cave. Like it was waiting, patient. When we reached the RVs, Marcus turned to me. That empty smile was still on his face. "Thank you for bringing me back," he said. "You brought us back," I corrected. "You found the way out." "Did I?" He looked genuinely puzzled. "I don't remember doing that." He walked off toward his RV. I watched him go, something cold settling in my stomach. That wasn't Marcus. Not really. Something had happened to him in the cave. Something worse than what happened to me. He'd lost more than just memories. He'd lost himself. I went back to my RV and locked the door. I sat on the bed and tried to take inventory of what I still remembered. My name, Ethan Adams. I lived in Michigan? Yes. Ann Arbor, Michigan. My job, something with computers. Web design. No, web development. My family. There was someone. My mother. Her name was. The name wouldn't come. I checked my phone. The contact labeled Mom was still there. I could call her, but what would I say? I couldn't remember her name. I couldn't remember what she looked like. There was a knock on my door. It was Sarah. She looked worried. "Ethan, are you okay? We saw you and Marcus come back. You both looked really rough." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "No, you're not. You've been acting weird since yesterday. And Marcus, I saw him walking past earlier and he looked completely out of it. What happened in that cave?" "I don't." I started, then stopped. "I can't remember." "What do you mean you can't remember?" "Exactly that. I can't remember things. Important things. It started after I went in the cave yesterday." She studied my face and I saw real fear there. "Ethan, that's not normal. You need to see a doctor. Like now. It's late. Everything's closed. Then first thing tomorrow. Promise me." I promised. She left, and I was alone again with the hum. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was back in the cave, surrounded by identical chambers, losing pieces of myself with each step. Around 2 a.m., I heard something outside. Footsteps. Moving past my RV, slow and deliberate. I looked out the window but saw nothing. The campground was dark, everyone else asleep. The footsteps came back. Closer this time. They stopped right outside my door. I held my breath, listening. The hum pulsed in my skull. Then I heard a voice. Soft, barely audible. "Ethan." It was my voice. My own voice, calling to me from outside. I didn't open the door. The footsteps moved away, circling the RV. I tracked them by sound, past the side window, around the back, past the other side, returning to the front door. "Ethan," my voice called again. "Let me in." I stayed silent, frozen on the bed. "I know you're there," my voice said. I can hear you thinking. Let me in. We need to talk. The door handle rattled. Tried to turn, but I'd locked it. The footsteps moved away. I watched through the window as a figure walked across the campground. Tall, male, wearing clothes like mine, but I couldn't see the face. It was too dark. The figure disappeared into the forest. I sat there until dawn, not sleeping, listening to the hum pulse in my head. When the sun came up, I got dressed and went outside. Everything looked normal. Other campers were emerging from their RVs, starting their morning routines. I saw Sarah and Kyle making coffee. I didn't see Marcus. I walked over to his RV. The door was open, hanging loose on its hinges. Inside, it was empty. Not just empty of Marcus, empty of everything. No gear, no personal items, no sign anyone had ever been there. The space looked sterile, untouched. But I had seen him come back here last night. I had watched him walk to this RV. I went back to my own RV and started packing. I was leaving, right now. I didn't care about the rest of my reservation or the deposit or anything else. I needed to get away from this place. As I was loading things into the RV, Sarah came over. "Leaving?" she asked. "Yeah, something came up. I need to get back home." She nodded, but she was looking at me strangely. "Ethan, do you remember what I look like?" The question caught me off guard. "What?" "My face. Can you picture my face right now?" I tried, and I couldn't. I was looking right at her, seeing her features, but the moment I tried to visualize her face in my mind, it slipped away like water. "I can see you," I said. "You're standing right there." "But you can't remember it, can you? When you look away, my face disappears." I looked away, then back. She was right. The face in front of me didn't connect to anything in my memory. "What's happening to me?" I asked, and my voice cracked. "I don't know," she said quietly, "but I think you should go to a hospital. Right now. Don't even pack. Just go." "I'll be fine," I heard myself say. "I just need to get home." "Ethan, I need to go." I finished packing quickly and got in the driver's seat. As I pulled out of the campground, I looked in the rearview mirror. Sarah was standing there watching me leave, and behind her at the edge of the forest I saw another figure. Tall, male, wearing clothes like mine. It waved at me. I drove. I'm writing this now in a rest stop somewhere in Kentucky. I've been driving for 6 hours, but I'm not sure where I'm going. Home is north. I checked a map, but I can't remember what home looks like. Can't remember the address. Can't remember if anyone's waiting for me there. The hum is still in my head. It's getting louder again, pulsing harder. And I'm forgetting things faster now. Every few minutes something else disappears. A word, a face, a concept. I looked at my driver's license again to confirm who I am. The name says Ethan Adams, but I'm starting to doubt that's true. That name feels wrong now, like a shirt that doesn't quite fit. Like something I put on and am wearing, but that isn't really me. I can't remember my mother's face. Can't remember if I have siblings. Can't remember my friends, my childhood, the place I grew up. But I can remember the cave. I can remember the symbols carved into the wall. I can remember Marcus's empty smile as he said, "Who's Marcus?" And I can remember my own voice outside my RV door, asking to be let in. The hum pulses again and more slips away. I need to write this down before I forget completely. Before there's nothing left of whoever I used to be. My name is... I need to check my license again. My name is Ethan Adams. I was in a cave. There was something in the cave. It took something from me. Or maybe it put something in me. Or maybe it did both. The person writing these words, am I still that person? Or am I what's left over after that person was carved away piece by piece? The hum pulses, I forget. The hum pulses, who am I? The hum pulses. I'm going back to the cave, I don't know why, but I know that's what I need to do. Something's calling me back there. The hum is calling me home. No, that's not right. The cave isn't home. Home is. I can't remember. But the cave remembers me. The cave is waiting. And I can hear it humming. I'm getting back in the car now. I'm going to drive back to the campground, back to the forest, back to the entrance hidden in the brush. Maybe Marcus is still there. Maybe he's been waiting for me. Maybe we'll remember together. Or maybe we'll forget together. Either way, the hum will finally stop, won't it? My name is. I should check my license. But I don't think it matters anymore. The hum knows who I am. And the hum is calling me home. My name is Rachel Morrison. This happened last October when my boyfriend David and I took our RV to San Rafael Swell in Utah. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know what happened out there, even if they don't believe me, especially if they don't believe me. We'd been planning the trip for months. David had just finished a brutal project at his architecture firm, and I'd been pulling double shifts at the hospital all summer. We needed to get away, somewhere remote where we could disconnect. The San Rafael Swell seemed perfect. Geological formations, hiking trails, and most importantly, no cell service. We wanted to be unreachable. The RV was a 32-foot Winnebago we'd bought used 3 years ago. David had spent the previous weekend checking the engine, the water system, the generator. He was meticulous about maintenance, the kind of person who kept spreadsheets tracking oil changes and tire rotations. I packed our clothes, food for a week, my Kindle loaded with books I'd been meaning to read. We left Portland on a Thursday morning, drove through Nevada, and reached the Swell by Saturday afternoon. The campground we'd reserved wasn't really a campground, more of a dispersed camping area managed by the BLM. Just a dirt road that split off the highway, winding between red rock formations and juniper trees. We passed 2 other RVs on the way in, but they were parked close to the entrance. We kept driving until we found a wide spot with a view of the sandstone cliffs. No one around for at least a mile in any direction. Perfect, David said, putting the RV in park. We spent the rest of that day setting up. David leveled the RV and connected the solar panels while I organized the interior and started dinner. The sunset was spectacular, the kind of orange and red light that makes everything look like it's on fire. We ate chicken and rice outside at our folding table, drinking cheap wine from metal camping cups. David kept pointing out rock formations, trying to guess how they'd formed. He was always doing that, analyzing structures, imagining the forces that shaped them. "Look at that one," he said, gesturing to a formation about a quarter mile away. "See how it leans? The erosion pattern suggests the wind here predominantly comes from the southwest." I smiled. "You can't turn it off, can you?" "What?" "The architecture brain." He laughed. "Sorry, I'll try to be less boring." "You're not boring," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "You're just you." That night, we made love in the RV's small bedroom, then lay there listening to the silence. It was the kind of quiet you never hear in the city. No cars, no voices, no hum of electronics. Just wind against the RV's metal skin and the occasional cry of something far away. I fell asleep feeling more relaxed than I had in months. I woke up around 3 in the morning because I needed to pee. The RV's bathroom was tiny and I always felt claustrophobic using it in the dark, so I grabbed my headlamp and stepped outside. The cold hit me immediately. Desert nights are brutal in October. I walked a decent distance from the RV, did my business behind a boulder, and headed back. That's when I noticed David was standing outside. He wasn't moving. Just standing there in his boxers and t-shirt, barefoot on the rocky ground, staring toward the cliffs. I called his name, but he didn't respond. I walked closer and touched his arm. He was cold, shivering. "David?" I said. "What are you doing?" He blinked slowly, then looked at me like he was surprised to see me there. I don't know, I was dreaming." "You're sleepwalking?" "I guess." He rubbed his face. "Sorry, let's go back inside." He'd never sleepwalked before, not in the 3 years we'd been together. I asked if he was okay and he said yes, just disoriented from the altitude maybe. We went back to bed. He fell asleep quickly, but I stayed awake for a while, thinking about how strange it was to find him just standing there staring at nothing. The next morning, I didn't mention it. We had coffee outside, watching the sun creep over the formations. David seemed fine, cheerful even. He suggested we hike to a slot canyon he'd read about 3 miles from our camp. I agreed, and we spent the day exploring the narrow passages between the red walls, taking photos, feeling small and insignificant in the best way. When we got back to the RV that evening, I kicked off my hiking boots by the door and went to take a shower. The RV's shower was cramped but functional, and I stood under the lukewarm water feeling the day's grime and sweat wash away. David started making dinner, pasta with jarred sauce, nothing fancy. I got dressed and joined him in the kitchen area. That's when I noticed him staring at something in his hand. "What's that?" I asked. He looked up at me, his expression confused. "I found it in my boot." "Found what?" He held out his hand. In his palm was a tooth. Not a small tooth like a child's baby tooth. This was a molar, adult-sized, with roots still attached. The enamel was yellowed, and there was dried blood crusted around the base. "Jesus," I said. "Where did that come from?" "I told you it was in my boot. Inside, against the toe." I stared at it. "That's disgusting. Throw it away." "But how did it get there?" "I don't know. Maybe you stepped on something dead, an animal carcass?" "Rachel, it was inside my boot, and this is a human tooth." I looked at him. "How do you know it's human?" "Look at it. That's a human molar." I didn't want to look at it closely, but I did. He was right. It looked human. "Maybe it's from a previous camper," I suggested. "Someone lost a tooth and it got kicked into your boot somehow." We drove 3 miles down a dirt road and parked in the middle of nowhere. How would someone else's tooth get in my boot? He had a point. I took the tooth from him, walked outside, and threw it as far as I could into the brush. When I came back inside, David was stirring the pasta, but he looked unsettled. "Let's just forget about it," I said. "It's gross, but it's gone now." He nodded, but neither of us had much appetite for dinner. That night, David woke me up, thrashing in his sleep. He was making noises, not quite words, more like grunts and moans. I shook him awake. "You were having a nightmare," I said. He sat up, breathing hard, his face slick with sweat. "Yeah." "What was it about?" "I don't remember." He rubbed his eyes. "Can we open a window? It's hot in here." It wasn't hot. If anything, it was cold. But I opened the small window above the bed anyway. He lay back down and was asleep within minutes. I stayed awake again, listening to him breathe, wondering if the altitude was affecting him more than either of us realized. The next morning, I found another tooth. This one was in the sink. I was brushing my teeth, and when I spat out the toothpaste, I saw it sitting in the drain. Same size as the first one, same yellowed enamel, same dried blood on the roots. I stared at it for a long moment, my stomach turning, then called for David. He came into the bathroom, still groggy. "What?" I pointed at the sink. His face went pale. "Is that—" "Yes." "Where did it come from?" "I don't know. It was just there." He picked it up with a piece of toilet paper, examining it. "This is the same tooth." "It can't be. I threw that one into the desert." "Look at it, Rachel. It's the same. Same color, same shape, same blood." I felt my skin crawl. "That's impossible." "I know." We stood there in the tiny bathroom, both of us staring at this tooth wrapped in toilet paper, neither of us willing to say what we were thinking, that something very wrong was happening. David threw it away again, this time in the RV's trash bag, which he then carried outside and dumped in the campground's bear-proof bin 1/2 a mile down the road. When he got back, he was out of breath. "There," he said. "It's gone." "Maybe we should leave," I suggested. "Because of a tooth?" "Because of whatever is happening here." He thought about it, then shook his head. "We've only been here 3 days. I'm not letting some weird coincidence ruin our vacation. It's probably just, I don't know, some kind of desert phenomenon. Maybe there's a Native American burial site nearby and things get disturbed by animals. That doesn't explain how it got in your boot, or in our sink." I know, but running away won't answer anything either. I wanted to argue, but part of me felt foolish. We were two rational adults freaking out over a tooth, so I agreed to stay at least for a few more days. That afternoon, we drove into the nearest town, a place called Green River, about 40 minutes away, to get more supplies and, honestly, to be around other people. We stopped at a small grocery store, bought more food and water, then got lunch at a diner. David seemed more like himself there, making jokes with the waitress, talking about the hikes we'd done. I started to relax. On the drive back, he asked, "Have you noticed anything else weird?" "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Sounds at night. Feelings of being watched." "Are you feeling watched?" He hesitated. "Sometimes, but maybe I'm just on edge because of the tooth thing." "I think we're both on edge." "Yeah." When we got back to the RV, everything looked normal. David checked the locks, even though we'd locked everything before leaving. We made dinner, played cards, tried to pretend everything was fine. But there was a tension between us now, an unspoken agreement not to talk about what was happening because neither of us had any explanation that made sense. That night, I woke up to find David's side of the bed empty. I sat up, panic immediate and sharp. The RV was dark except for the faint glow of moonlight through the windows. I called his name. No answer. I grabbed my headlamp and got up, searching the small space. He wasn't in the bathroom. Wasn't in the kitchen area. I opened the door and stepped outside, my heart pounding. He was standing in the same spot as before, about 30 feet from the RV, staring at the cliffs. But this time his posture was different. His arms hung loose at his sides, his head tilted at an odd angle. "David!" I shouted. He didn't move. I walked toward him, my headlamp beam cutting through the darkness. When I got close, I could see his eyes were open, but they weren't focused on anything. He was completely still, not even shivering despite wearing only his boxers in the freezing night air. "David, wake up." I grabbed his shoulders and shook him. His eyes slowly moved to meet mine, but there was something off about his expression. It was blank, empty, like he was looking through me rather than at me. "Come inside," I said, pulling his arm. He followed without resistance, moving like a puppet. I got him back into the RV, wrapped him in a blanket, and made him sit on the couch. His skin was ice cold. "What were you doing out there?" I asked. He stared at me for a long moment before answering. "Listening." "Listening to what?" "The singing." My stomach dropped. "What singing?" "Can't you hear it?" I listened. There was nothing but wind. "David, there's no singing." He looked confused, like he was waking from a deep sleep. I thought I heard." He trailed off, rubbing his face. "Sorry, I'm really sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me." "We need to leave," and I said, "Tomorrow, first thing." "Okay." "I'm serious." I said, "Okay." We went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there watching him, making sure he didn't get up again. His breathing was steady, normal, but I couldn't shake the image of him standing there in the dark, talking about singing that didn't exist. When morning came, I got up and started packing immediately. David woke up groggy, but he didn't argue. He started breaking down the outdoor equipment while I organized the inside of the RV. We were going to leave. We were going to get out of this place and never come back. I was folding clothes when I found it. The tooth. It was in my pillowcase. I screamed. David came running. I showed him, my hand shaking. "How?" I said. "How is this possible?" He took the tooth from me, and I saw something change in his face. His expression went from confusion to something else. Recognition, maybe, or acceptance. He closed his fist around it. "David? It wants us to stay," he said quietly. "What? We can't leave." "David, what are you talking about?" He looked at me and his eyes were different. There was something behind them now, something that made my skin crawl. "I need to stay here," he said. "I understand now. You're scaring me. Don't be scared." He smiled, but it wasn't his smile. It was too wide, too empty. "Everything's going to be fine." I backed away from him. We're leaving. Right now. No. David. I said no. His voice was sharp, violent. He'd never spoken to me like that before. I ran for the door, but he grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. I tried to pull away, but he was stronger. He dragged me back inside and pushed me down onto the couch. Just wait, he said, his voice calm again. Just wait a little longer. You'll understand. Understand what? He didn't answer. He went to the driver's seat and sat down, staring out the windshield at the desert. I stayed on the couch, my mind racing. This wasn't David, this was someone, something else wearing his face. I thought about running. The keys were in his pocket, but I could run to the road, flag down another camper, get help. But as I looked at him sitting there, so still and strange, I realized I was terrified of what he might do if I tried. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, heating the RV. David didn't move. I tried talking to him a few times, asking if he was okay, suggesting we at least open some windows, but he didn't respond. He just sat there, staring. Around noon, he finally stood up. I need to go for a walk, he said. David, stay here. No, I'm coming with you. He looked at me with those wrong eyes. Stay. Here. I stayed. He left, walking toward the cliffs in the direction he'd been staring at during his sleepwalking episodes. I watched from the window as his figure got smaller and smaller, until he disappeared behind a rock formation. As soon as he was out of sight, I moved. I searched frantically for the keys, checked his discarded clothes, the kitchen drawers, everywhere, but he'd taken them with him. I tried to hotwire the RV, something I'd seen in movies but had no idea how to actually do. It didn't work. I was trapped. I went outside and looked in the direction David had gone. The desert stretched out endlessly, the rock formations creating a maze of shadows and light. I could try to run, but I didn't know the terrain, didn't know how far I'd have to go to reach help. And some part of me, the part that had loved David for 3 years, couldn't leave him out there alone. So I waited. The sun moved across the sky. Afternoon turned to evening. I kept checking the time on my phone, which had no service, of course, watching the minutes tick by. 4 hours, 5, 6. Darkness fell, and he still wasn't back. I turned on all the RV's exterior lights, hoping he'd see them and find his way back. I stood outside calling his name, my voice echoing off the rocks. Nothing. By midnight, I was crying. I'd convinced myself he was dead, that he'd fallen or gotten lost or been attacked by something. I thought about walking to the road in the dark, trying to find help, but I was paralyzed by fear and indecision. Then I saw a light in the distance, a headlamp bobbing as someone walked. I ran toward it, shouting David's name. He emerged from the darkness, his face illuminated by my headlamp. He was smiling. David, where were you? I've been so worried. I found it, he said. Found what? Come see. He turned and started walking back toward the cliffs. I grabbed his arm. David, it's the middle of the night, we can't. Come see, he repeated, his voice flat. I didn't want to go. Every instinct told me not to follow him into the dark desert. But he was my boyfriend, and despite everything, I couldn't abandon him. We walked for what felt like forever, following his headlamp beam through the landscape. The formations around us looked different at night. Alien. Threatening. I kept close to David, afraid I'd lose him in the darkness. Finally, we reached a narrow opening between 2 rock walls. David squeezed through and I followed. On the other side was a small canyon, maybe 50 feet across, with walls that rose up into the darkness. In the center was a circle of stones, and inside the circle was a hole in the ground. Look, David said, pointing to the hole. I walked closer, shining my headlamp down into it. The hole was deeper than my light could reach, just darkness going down and down. What is this? I asked. It's where they put them, he said. Put what? The teeth. I turned to look at him. His smile had gotten wider. David, what are you talking about? The people who were here before, they left their teeth as offerings, to keep it asleep. Keep what asleep? He gestured to the hole. "What's down there?" I felt ice run through my veins. "We need to go back to the RV." "They stopped coming," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "No one's been here in years, so it started waking up. It sent out pieces of itself looking for new offerings." "David, that's what the tooth is, a piece of it, and it chose us." I backed away from the hole, my heart hammering. "This isn't real. You're sick. You need help." "I need to feed it," he said simply. Before I could react, he lunged at me. I tried to run, but he was faster. He tackled me to the ground, his weight pinning me down. I screamed and fought, but his hands found my face, his fingers digging into my mouth. "Just one," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Just one tooth, that's all it needs." I bit down hard on his fingers, tasting blood. He yelped and pulled back, and I scrambled away from him, running for the opening in the rocks. Behind me, I could hear him coming, his footsteps crunching on the stone. I made it through the opening and ran blindly into the dark, my headlamp bouncing wildly. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care, just knew I had to get away from him and that horrible hole in the ground. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I collapsed behind a boulder, gasping for breath, listening for sounds of pursuit. There was nothing but my own ragged breathing and the wind. I waited there for hours, too terrified to move. Eventually, the sky began to lighten with the approaching dawn. I risked looking around the boulder. David was standing about 30 yards away, perfectly still, facing away from me. He was looking back toward where we'd come from, toward the canyon with the hole. I stayed hidden, watching him. He didn't move. The sun rose, painting the desert red and gold, and still he stood there like a statue. Finally, as the heat of the day began to build, he started walking. Not toward me, but away, back toward the RV. I waited until he was out of sight, then I started moving in the opposite direction, toward where I hoped the road was. It took me 3 hours to reach the main highway. A trucker stopped when he saw me stumbling along the shoulder, covered in dirt and scratches, my clothes torn. He called the police. I told them everything, about the tooth, about David's behavior, about the hole in the ground. They found the RV still parked where we'd left it. David wasn't there. They searched the area for days. They found nothing. No hole, no canyon, no David. The RV showed no signs of a struggle. My belongings were still packed, ready to leave. David's clothes and ID were still there. It was like he'd simply vanished. The police asked me questions, so many questions. They wanted to know about our relationship, if we'd been fighting, if David had any mental health issues. They searched my background, David's background, looking for explanations. Eventually, with no evidence of foul play and no body, they classified him as a missing person. Probably got lost in the desert and succumbed to exposure, they said. It happens more often than you'd think. I went back to Portland alone. I tried to resume my life. I went back to work at the hospital. I saw a therapist who specialized in trauma. I told her about the tooth, and she suggested I might have experienced a shared psychotic episode with David, folie à deux, triggered by stress and isolation. Maybe she was right. But 3 months later, I found a tooth in my bathroom sink. I stared at it, my heart stopping. Same size, same yellowed enamel, same dried blood on the roots. I picked it up with shaking hands and threw it in the garbage. The next morning it was on my pillow. I threw it away again. It came back. I drove to the ocean and threw it into the waves. It appeared in my car's cup holder the next day. I tried to convince myself I was hallucinating, that the therapist was right about the psychotic episode. But the tooth was real. I could feel it, touch it, see it. After a week of this, I did what I knew I shouldn't do. I looked up flights to Utah. The tooth hasn't appeared since I booked the ticket. It's been 3 days. I think it knows I'm coming back. I leave tomorrow morning. I'm going back to San Rafael Swell, back to find that canyon. I don't know what I'll find there. Maybe David. Maybe just answers. Maybe nothing at all. But I know one thing. It's not done with me. It sent the tooth back, again and again, until I understood what it wanted. I'm writing this down and leaving it with my friend Jenna. If something happens to me, if I don't come back, at least someone will know what happened. At least the story will be told, though I'm not sure it matters. I think about those people David mentioned, the ones who came before who left their teeth as offerings. I think about how many teeth a person has. 32 if you count wisdom teeth. I've been checking my teeth every day since the tooth first appeared. Counting them, making sure they're all there. So far they are. But last night I dreamed I was standing in the dark, staring at red rock cliffs, and I could hear singing. Beautiful, terrible singing coming from deep underground. And in the dream I understood the words. They were singing about hunger, about waiting, about how patient the earth can be. When I woke up, my mouth tasted like blood. I checked my teeth in the mirror. Still 32. But one of them, a molar on the bottom left, felt loose when I touched it with my tongue. I'm leaving in 6 hours. I'm going back to the swell, to find that hole, to find David, to understand what's happening to me. I'm not sure I'll come back. If you're reading this, if Jenna had to give this to someone because I didn't return, then I have one request. Don't go looking for me. Don't try to find that place. Don't go to San Rafael Swell. Because I think I finally understand what David understood, what the people before him understood. It's not about the tooth. It was never about the tooth. The tooth is just an invitation, and once you accept it, once you acknowledge it exists and follow it back to its source, you become part of something much older and much hungrier than you can imagine. I'm going anyway. I have to. The singing won't stop, and my tooth is getting looser, and I know, that soon it will fall out on its own. And when it does, I think something else will take its place. Something that doesn't belong to me. So I'm going back. Not to fight it or escape it, but because I understand now that I was chosen, just like David was chosen, just like all the others were chosen, going back however many years or decades or centuries. The desert is patient. The thing beneath the desert is more patient still, and it's so hungry. I'm leaving this letter with Jenna at 6 a.m. By noon, I should be on the plane. By tomorrow night, I'll be back at the swell. I don't know what I'll find. I don't know if I'll ever come back. But if you find this, if you're reading these words, then you know what happened to Rachel Morrison and David Chen. You know we didn't just get lost in the desert. You know there's something out there, something that's been waiting for a very long time. And maybe, if you're very unlucky, it will choose you next. When it does, you'll know. You'll find something that shouldn't be there. A tooth, a bone, a scrap of something ancient and wrong. And you'll try to throw it away, but it will keep coming back. And eventually you'll hear the singing too. You'll hear it and you'll understand and you'll do exactly what I'm doing now. You'll go back. You'll have no choice. Because that's what it wants. That's what it's always wanted. Not our teeth. Us. Note found in the possession of Jenna Walsh, dated October 24, 2024. Rachel Morrison's flight records show she departed Portland International Airport on October 24th at 10:47 a.m. with a connecting flight through Denver, arriving in Salt Lake City at 4:32 p.m. Her rental car was returned to the Salt Lake City airport on October 26, 2 days later, with 247 miles on it. Rachel Morrison was reported missing on October 29th when she failed to show up for her shift at Providence Portland Medical Center. Her current whereabouts are unknown. David Chen remains missing. A search of the San Rafael Swell area in November 2024 found no evidence of either individual, and no geological formation matching the description in this letter could be located.